This video explains what we can rightly call the case of an invented demon, or the straw man argument of a church leader against Alice Bailey, wrongly attributing to her what critics have called, quote, a 10-point plan by Alice Bailey and the New World Order for the destruction of Christianity. The life and teachings of Alice Bailey have provoked criticism and attack, especially from a number of persons identified with one or other of the many orthodox religious organizations. Numerous essays and videos have criticized her, accusing her of all manner of evil. In its most radical form, these attacks demonize her, and attribute ideas, sentiments, and positions to her that distort or attribute to her the exact opposite of what she actually thought and wrote. Here I cite examples of these attacks and contrast them with Alice Bailey's actual thoughts on the corresponding topics. Her critics said she advocated to make homosexuality an alternative lifestyle. Google Gemini gives a clear summary of her actual thought, saying that Alice Bailey's position on homosexuality was complex, viewing it both as a passing evolutionary stage and something needing compassionate understanding. However, she also cautioned against what she saw as a perverted mentality behind many of its modern expressions. She stated that homosexuality has always existed and is a passing evolutionary stage of human development. She insisted that it should be understood and not condemned. Her critics also said that she advocated to, quote, make divorce easy and legal, free people from the concept of marriage for life. What Alice Bailey actually wrote was as follows, quote, again, the difficulty of the problem can be found in the widely diverse attitudes of men's minds to the subject. These attitudes range all the way from an ill-regulated promiscuity to a monogamy which has worked out into a cruel imposition and restraint upon women, and an unbridled license on the part of men. Attendant upon these difficulties, and growing out of these wrong attitudes, the legalities and the illegalities, the license and the restraints, have produced points of infection, if I may so call them, in our civilization. Because of them, we find a lax morality which is based on bewilderment, red light districts which are but an unhappy compromise with vicious tendencies and unsatisfied desires, divorce courts which devastate the life of the family and in time undermine the national life, of which each family unit should be a wholesome part, and the steady growth of disease as the result of the prevalent promiscuity and the many illicit relations. There is also a psychological factor to be found, of real importance. This fact is the militancy expressed by the many groups of people who are seeking to impose their own ideas and their peculiar solution of the problem upon their fellowmen. Alice Bailey also spoke of marriage in connection with reincarnation and Christ as follows. Such is the law which is crying now for universal recognition, and which, when understood by thinking people, will do much to solve the problems of sex and marriage. Why will this be so? Because when this law is admitted as a governing intellectual principle, all men will tread more carefully the path of life, and will proceed with greater caution to fulfill their family and group obligations. They will know full well that whatsoever a man soweth, that will he also reap. The second basic postulate was enunciated for us by Christ when he told us to love our neighbor as ourselves. To this we have paid, as yet, but little attention. We have loved ourselves and have sought to love those we like. But to love universally and because our neighbor is a soul as we are, with a nature essentially perfect and an infinite destiny. About marriage, Bailey also wrote, "There is no department of life, no field of expression, no meeting of obligation, no use of the physical apparatus, in which the soul cannot fulfill the part of the dominating factor and all things be done truly to the glory of God." Her critics have said she advocated to, quote, "debase art, make it run mad and to promote new forms of art which will corrupt and defile the imagination of people." What she actually wrote on this is that art is, quote, "the power to recognize the beautiful, the true and the good and by means of the creative arts to prove their existence. It is this inherent, spiritual faculty which has produced all the great sons of God, all truly spiritual people, all artists, scientists, humanitarians and philosophers and all who, with sacrifice, love their fellowmen." Bailey was in no way endorsing the debased forms of art, but pointing toward a slowly emerging higher art of the future that would come to express the spiritual side of humanity. She also wrote, quote, "What initial steps the educators of the different countries take will inevitably determine the nature of the coming civilization. They must prepare for a renaissance of all the arts and for a new and free flow of the creative spirit in man. The history of mankind is fundamentally the history of the growth of ideas, progressively realized, and of man's determination to live by them. With this power goes the capacity to sense the unknown, to believe in the unprovable, to seek, search and demand the revelation of that which is hidden and undiscovered and which century after century owing to this demanding spirit of investigation is revealed. It is the power to recognize the beautiful, the true and the good and by means of the creative arts to prove their existence." One can find many videos and text on the internet speaking of, quote, "a 10-point plan by Alice Bailey and the New World Order for the destruction of Christianity." In reality, Bailey was a mystical Christian but one who did criticize some of the many conflicting theologies of church leaders. Bailey observed that many variations of Orthodox Christianity emphasize God outside of man rather than God within, whereas Alice Bailey, while recognizing God transcendent, also emphasized that, as is often quoted, the kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:21. Moreover, her conception was that human culture is slowly evolving toward an expression of spirituality in all departments of life, including that of true Christianity based on love. In summary, there is no such thing as a 10-point plan in Alice Bailey. The concept was invented by critics who saw the mystical aspects of her writings as unorthodox and in competition with their preferred teachings.